Hello, everyone, and welcome to session 2, Challenges and Opportunities for Occupational Health and Safety in the Post-COVID Era. Please let me say a few words about the session theme and introduce our presenters. The current COVID-19 crisis has changed our everyday lives almost in every aspect. So many people have died or hospitalized due to the severe impact of COVID-19 on the vulnerable population. During the pandemic, the proposed social and public health strategies, along with the appropriate occupational health services and measures, were crucial to protect the working personnel in high-risk sectors, such as public services, healthcare, education, transportation, among others. Therefore, it is necessary the researchers of occupational health and safety to investigate the local, national, and global responses to the COVID-19 pandemic and share the lessons learned and gain experiences in order to improve the future preparedness and response to similar events. This session focuses on the challenges and opportunities in the post-COVID era, such as workplace environment, lessons learned for occupational health and safety derived from the COVID-19 pandemic, occupational health and safety and health equity after the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as strategies, services, and policies for the protection of workers and managers, among others. And let's say a few words about our first presenter, which have the honor to have him today, is Ehi Eden. He's Chief Executive Officer in Occupational Health and Safety Managers in Nigeria. Ehi Eden is an occupational safety, health, and well-being practitioner in Nigeria also, and he's a doctoral fellow working within the space of workplace health and wellness promotion as a study area. He's also the CEO Occupational Health and Safety Manager and President of OSHA Africa. The title of his presentation is COVID-19 Response, a Shared Experience from Africa. Ehi, the floor is yours, please.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for inviting me, Christos. Thank you for a very great introduction. Let me, at this point, share my slide. Okay. Within the time I have, I will be speaking on the shared experience that we had in Africa as it regards to COVID-19. We all woke up just like you are in anywhere you are in the world. We woke up to see a stranger in our world, and we tried to find out what this stranger was, and took everybody unaware. And that stranger was introduced to us as COVID-19, and we took the whole world by storm. And we all learned we didn't have enough information about the virus. It means we have to learn the virus altogether. No information that we got was changing by the day. And but what do we have to do when this came? We realized in Africa, like the word of Condoleezza Rice said, we need a common enemy to unite us. We didn't need to start looking at who is a public health physician, who is a hygienist. We all need to come together irrespective of professional boundaries and see how we can combat and control this virus, in Africa. There were many obvious things in Africa. Some of such were not prepared for the virus. We didn't have any information about it. Insufficient provision for infection prevention and control in most policies at both country and enterprise level. We didn't even have IPC, as a due consideration in our policies at country and enterprise level. We had fairly fragile healthcare system as was paraded or discussed across the world, which means when people start falling ill, there will be no enough healthcare system to cater for them. We have inadequacies in immediate resource mobilization. These were very obvious things. Then positive, very few occupational hygiene experts that we had in the region. But while this was being discussed, with looking at this, and there were a lot of fears and predictions that were made about Africa at some point. Some people say that Africa, there will be corpses littering the streets of Africa. And these were the predictions, and they sent further fear. But what people didn't remember is that we have already had a history behind us. And what most people forgot, that Africa once had Ebola outbreak, and we rose up to the challenge and were able to push Ebola out, and mortality was very minimal. So we had to leverage on what we did in the time of Ebola to see how we can draw experience from our history to see how we could combat the COVID-19. And this was what people forgot when they were making their predictions about Africa. While COVID-19 was making its journey across countries, across regions, will it come to Africa was not the question we're asking. When will it get to Africa was the question we're asking. And sadly, on February 14th, I mean, which all of us could regard as Valentine's Day, that we used to take our lovers out, we had the first case, I mean, happen in Egypt, and that was the first case that came to Africa. And we knew the virus had been talked about as in the world has finally found its place into Africa. So we all had to come together to see what we could do. Then the first thing that happened shortly after that announcement was the whole world was locked down. I mean, Nigeria was not exempted. Countries in Africa started closing down. Started closing down. I mean, people were going out of workplaces and going into a lockdown and all what have you. These are the things that characterize us. And we saw things like these. Shops were closed, retail shops, I mean, clubs. I mean, these are things that we were not prepared for. Yes, we had the pandemic that happened many years ago, the flu, but we didn't know, we read about it, but we didn't have to experience this. So this was a shocker to all of us. And the next thing we had were people were going into isolation, and this brewed quite some critical issues that were very pathetic. People having mental health, increase in mental health disorder based on isolation. Even the word isolation at a point, hearing that word became even the mental issue, because the more you hear that word, the more you get disturbed. So we had all these things surrounding us. Then the question is, what do we have to do? People have to start working from home. And these are things that most organizations in Africa were not used to. Yes, even while most of us in occupational health have advocated for remote working, it seems as if remote working was not possible, but we were forced to do this by COVID-19. And the next thing we saw happening was that even the system changes. I mean, where we had to cater for both offices and even those working remotely. This became the new normal. But yes, while we're doing this, we're really used to it. No, it was new to us. We had to see what we could do to ensure that we work safely. But we also realized that even in most countries in Africa, and most legislation, there was no business continuity, very, very, very conspicuous in our policy. So people that had to work from home, there were no preparedness for business continuity. I mean, so a lot of businesses suffered because that plan was not in their overall business plan, but this has to become compulsory for everyone to do. Then we realized that there was an urgent need to look at three key things. That was the COVID-19, which of course was ravaging us, people that were working from home, and even if the lockdown had to be released, how do we return to work? These were three clear issues we had to speak to, we had to provide for within Africa. Then the next thing we realized was that we needed to see leadership clearly in the state that we're in. We needed to see clear leadership in the state that we're in. We can't all just sit down. Yes, we need somebody to rise up to the challenge. And what we did was to see how we can build collaboration among Africa and African professionals. And this is what we started doing. Building collaboration means we have to see how we can put our resources together, how we can teach people, train people, and see how we can, I mean, just create some guidelines and support each other across Africa. And that was how we were able to come up with the African OSHA Expat actions. And what we did was we have to work across professional boundaries, whether you are an occupational safety and health expert, whether you are a public health expert, whether you are a hygienist. I mean, these boundaries have to be taken down so that we can work on the interest of common Africa. There was no compartment, but what we had as our goal was one Africa. And one of such actions that we took was led by we came up with actions led by ILO and African Union Development Agency and OSHA Africa. And we had the National Institute of Occupational Health in South Africa. We had East Central and Southern African Health Community. Then we had the Department of Health Republic of South Africa. So we came together to build up this collaboration that we can use to address this issue. What was the focus we had in mind? What you do not know, you have no resources, you have no capability to confront it. We realized there were lack of competencies. The first thing we had to do was to see how we can build up training, that we can start training our people. What we started, one of the first action we took was weekly COVID-19 preparedness and response training by Africans and for Africa. This was happening every week on Zoom. I mean, Zoom became a very strong tool we had to use. So in these trainings we're having weekly, we're having people come attending, about 500 to 800 people attending every week, and issues about COVID-19 were being discussed on preparedness and how to manage them. And this was how we build professionals across different countries in Africa that were able to offer support to their countries. Then, also after that, at April, we also had the World Health and Safety Day at work, which we also marked in Africa. Collectively, we had 369 people in attendance from 38 African countries and 11 countries outside Africa. And one of the things that we also strengthened in this day was to talk about occupational safety and health, and also roll out plans that we can adopt in our different countries. One of such issues that were very critical in our work was risk communication. Let's start communicating the risk. We need to demystify, the falsehood within COVID-19. What are the things that people need to know? How risky is COVID-19? That was one of the things we did. And one thing was to deal with the what and the why. The what is COVID-19 really? Let people have the clear information about COVID-19 and why. Why do we need people to take those preventive actions? Because when people know what the issues are and why they are meant to do what they are told to do, response become easy. So these are some of the things we're teaching in those trainings we're having across Africa. And one of such communications was also how to teach people how to protect themselves in this physical distancing, use of nose masks, and all the pharmaceutical protocols that they have to take. And these were clear issues that were very evident in the trainings we're making available for our people. Then outside that, we also deploy in Africa what you call employees family-centered approach. What does this mean? We train our employees. We teach employers to train their employees at work at every time they have, but we also make it a point of responsibility that employees should also get back home and train their families on what to do. So this became a very good approach that we use in Africa that gave us very outstanding results on how to combat COVID-19. Then we also understood that, yes, we have the work that we do. These are common components of the communications. How does it affect us in the work that we do in our workforce and in our workplaces? These were clearly three components that were very visible in the communications we're also rolling out. Then there was the need for an urgency of leadership action. We need leadership to also rise up. When I talk about leadership, government, CEOs of organizations and leadership of organizations, we started making them engage teams in planning the response for COVID-19. Now we have shifted to CEOs because those that were trained in those online platforms, how to start speaking to CEOs, train organizations on what to do. Other responsibilities that we have in the organization may have to decrease for this new priority to take a center stage. So we realize we have to tone down and slow down on driving people to look for profits and meet targets, but let's focus on the battling COVID-19 for now. And then we had open daily response conversation. This was very, very eminent across organizations, across countries. And we're also speaking to mental health because we realized people were also having heightened mental health issue because we have people suffering from lone worker syndrome and loneliness and bereavement, as the case may be. We're also looking at our teams sufficiently connected. How do we start engaging ourselves amongst our teams? We don't want anybody to be left alone. We have to move together as a team. Then we have strategic daily communication plan to reach all employees from their remote work locations. Yes, why would we advocate that this should be done? Because when you see employees having issues, when they speak to you, you see their concern in their facial expression. But now we have people that we can't see, yet they have issues, we can't understand what they're going through. So there was the need to reach them. Then to also train our managers. We're also advocating on training of managers because as the information about COVID-19 was changing, what we learned yesterday became obsolete about 48 hours after, or changes 48 hours after. So there was a need to train managers with new information because we realized great managers will make great remote managers. We also advocated that plans to measure effort should be strengthened and not result for now. We need to measure effort, not result. Yet, so long as effort has been put in, let that be good enough. It's not the result that the person had that we should be concerned about. Then there was also collective engagement, determine employees. I mean, now we have to also look at how do we determine employees who will stay at home based on higher risks on vulnerability. There were employees that had underlying health conditions. They were profiled within the workplace. So those that could come to work, that were very urgent to come to work based on the very sensitive job they do. I mean, they had to come to work. But those who were aged and had underlying health conditions were made to stay off work. Then assess those risks and engage and agree on mitigation. What are the possible mitigation we can find? And these were the highlights that we also found out in Africa. And continuously, we're reviewing updates on plan. Every plan that we have, as we do our weekly training, we're also reviewing weekly updates. And we're also agreeing on processes to report suspected cases and agree on support mechanism. And these are the things we're doing we're training workplaces to do. Then also designing an infection prevention control plan. I mean, before now, most policies didn't have this. So it became a thing that we had to design into work plan as a result of COVID-19. Then we're also teaching management how to assign roles and responsibilities, I mean, as it concerns COVID-19 management. Then most importantly, we're also teaching them how to agree on sources of information. So because they were infodemic that were also characterized by the pandemic. So clear source of information became very crucial thing we had to speak to. Then we needed institutional support in ensuring that we were all dealing with the same thing together and speaking the same language. So we're looking at the Ministry of Labor and Employment. We're engaging them across different countries because from OSHA Africa perspective, we are spread across African countries. We're discussing with Ministry of Labor and Employment, discussing with Ministry of Health, discussing with countries' centers for disease control, then national occupational health institutions across countries. They were involved, they were engaging them. Then the national health insurance came. Why were we involving them? So that when we have people who take ill for COVID-19, does health insurance cover these things? How do we make a window for them to be able to access treatment? These are the things we're looking at in our discussion. Then when we found out that the lockdown was being relaxed, people were starting to return to work, we also started a new conversation, determine those who should return to work and how this can be done in batches of phases. This was the next training we brought on board. What form of checks are needed when people are coming back to work? I mean, those that will do those checks at the gate, how are they going to be trained? And these are some of the things we're also looking at while we're also returning to work. Then along the line, we also, do we need pre-resumption questionnaires? If there are people who live with people who came from high-risk countries, how do we identify them and what are those tests we need to subject them to before we bring them into our workplaces? Do we need air conditioners again in the workplace, or we need open ventilation? So these are some of the things that characterize our discussion on return to work. The new clinic pattern, how would they be managed? And these are some of the key issues that we brought into our discussion. Then some positive fallout out of all these actions was, one, at the end of the day, we're able to create an African Union OSHA Expat working group, which was born out of this effort and action that we all put up. And this action group, this Expat group, have done so much work across Africa. And it's not just going to be disbanded after COVID-19. This group has come to stay and offering technical support to African Union.
You have less than 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Then we will set up 2 subcommittees along the line, and the committees that we set up, one of those such committees was working on how do we create guidelines for COVID-19 response in Africa, then how do we train people even in COVID-19 and outside of COVID-19. Then we also were able to come up with so much guidelines, sector-specific guidelines, and time will not permit me to read this out, but you can all see it on the screen. These are all the guidelines that we're able to develop in Africa based on the effort and the actions that we took, and these guidelines were sector-specific, and they are being used across Africa right now, even within the pandemic and after the pandemic. It's still going to be very useful. And other activities that also came out was that through the COVID-19 COVID response training was done for some government in some countries in Africa. We had COVID-19 response training done for the government of Lesotho, government of Malawi, government of Mozambique, through this efforts and action that we put together. So these are the guidelines. We have a series of guidelines. This is the link to the guideline. You can find them in the NEPAD website. And again, we also had return to school through the effort and the training we put up, people were able to come up with guidelines that were used in safe return to school for children. So these are some of the publications that were able to come up based on the action that we put up in Africa. So recommendations is urgent policy review for country and at regional level and country level, continuous infection prevention and control collaboration, establishment of sub-regional occupational OSHA collaboration centers across the sub-region, review of undersourced labor inspection across Africa, then intensify regional infectious and disease in Africa and preparedness plan, then organizational leadership and engagement at country level. So we also have what we call the African region COVID-19 post-mortem review, what happened with COVID-19, and use that to make a plan in combating other diseases. At this point, as I close, I want to salute every healthcare worker that have been at the forefront of COVID-19 response and treating people and putting their life at personal risk. We salute you. We lost a lot of health workers, and our candles also burn to every family who lost a family member and loved one to COVID-19. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, I say thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ehi, for the nice presentation. We're going to discuss and answer questions at the end of the session. So I will continue with the second presenter and say a few things about him. Our second presenter is Michele Dinelli. He's working at the European Union OSHA since 2020 as pre-accession network manager. He's responsible for the implementation of the Instrument for Pre-Accession Assistance, IPA project, whose aim is to enhance the inclusion of IPA beneficiaries into the network of the European Union Agency through knowledge sharing and information exchange events. His presentation title is Long COVID Guides for Managers and for Workers. And the floor is yours, Michele.
Thank you very much, Christos. Thank you also the organizers for having me today. Let me share my presentation, and please let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can see.
Very good. Right. So, as you already anticipated, I'm working for EU OSHA, the European Union Occupational Safety and Health Agency. We are based in Spain, in Bilbao. And the topic of my presentation is to introduce one of the latest publications of the agency, the guidelines for managers and workers concerning long COVID. Very briefly about the role of the agency, we are an information agency. We deal indeed with occupational safety and health. So we are not an executive agency. We do not make decisions binding member states. We are decentralized because, as I said, our headquarters are in Spain. And as in this case is for OSHA elements, we also have a tripartite management board. The aim of the agency is to share knowledge and information with European Union member states, but also with the EFTA countries and IPA beneficiaries. IPA, as you mentioned properly, stands for Instrument for Pre-Accession Assistance, and it refers to the pre-accession countries, namely Western Balkans and Turkey. And indeed, I'm the project manager for this project, with the aim to include IPA beneficiaries into the network of the agency. The main mandate, the main motto of the agency is that we work to make European workplaces safer, healthier, and more productive for the benefit of businesses, employees, and governments. We promote a culture of risk prevention to improve working conditions in Europe. So, what exactly do we do? We collect, analyze, and disseminate information. We have a lot of projects. We have a lot of analysis. And through these activities, we are able to provide information to European Union member countries and EFTA and IPA beneficiaries. One thing that it's important to make clear is, being an information agency, we do not make legislation. So we don't support member state or other governments to create laws. We do not inspect workplaces. We don't enforce the legislation. We mostly provide information and knowledge for policymakers to support them in tailoring ad hoc law and policies to further protect OSH, for researchers in non-related fields that touch upon OSH, for workplace actors, for workers, for managers, duty holders, for inspectors, and for all the practitioners, but also for other actors. Education is a key element in OSH. So we also provide information to teachers, architects, health professionals. As you can see, we have a very limited budget. It's roughly 15 million euros per year, out of which 8 million are operational. And as per staff, we are more or less 64 staff. How do we provide information and knowledge exchange? Well, we, as I said, through projects, through researches, and we put all this information, this knowledge into our publications. We communicate to the stakeholders also through publications. With regard to the specific topic of today, COVID-19, at the end of 2019, a new coronavirus was identified. The global public health was threatened, including occupational health, with effect on safety, but not only on high-risk sectors, also on child, on healthcare, and other relevant sectors. Millions of workers started to work from home, which was a huge phenomenon that facilitated the rise of connectivity. However, there are specific OSH risks associated to telework, like ergonomic risks, since not all home places are properly equipped, long working hours, as often is difficult to disconnect, psychosocial risks due to lack of social interaction, etc. OSHA had to respond fast and developed a COVID-19 specific guidance. Among these guidance, it's important to underline the back to workplaces, adapting workplaces, and protected workers. This publication provided information and relevant knowledge on how to support the return to workplaces. The publication, as the other publication, was translated in all European Union member states languages, but also in IPA languages. We also have developed the NAPO film. You can see my presentation, a screenshot of NAPO. NAPO is as you probably know, is a character, non-spoken character that provides, act through scenes and tackle the most important aspects of OSH. So the fact that it's unspoken does not need to be translated. And it's easy then to transmit the messages to the stakeholders, but including to teachers, to children, to raise awareness about OSH. We have specific tools like OIRA, the Online Interactive Risk Assessment. And all of this information, all these resources are made available for the public on our websites. In the COVID-19, back to the workplace, OSHA highlighted proposed actions and control measures to reduce exposures to COVID-19. The guide was first published in April 2020 and then was revised and upgraded in December 2020. The guide provides particular recommendations on planning and vigilance, for example, carrying out only necessary jobs at workplace during the time of the pandemic, awareness and information, for instance, placing posters to encourage workers to stay at home when sick, or informing them about hygiene measures at the entrance of workplaces, specific hygiene measures, for instance, supplying soap and water or hand sanitizers in convenient places, physical distancing, for example, not only in workplaces and meeting rooms, but also during breaks, organizational measures, for example, the use of surgical face masks in the workplace and in closed places, for instance, in shared cars, in shared vans, when to use personal protective equipment, when and if needed, of course, but overall also proper training on how to implement these proposed measures. OSHA developed other guides on the topic of COVID-19. These guides aimed at raising awareness on other issues related to COVID-19. For example, OSHA tackled resuming work after a period of work closure, in case when the workplace was closed for a period of time and for reasons related to COVID-19. In these cases, a plan is needed to resume work by taking into account also health and safety. The absence of substantial number of workers, even temporary, could cause a strain in the continuity of activities. The necessity to manage a high number of workers that for the first time are teleworking, especially since the work environment is not equipped with appropriate ergonomic equipment. In that case, for instance, our agency made available a lump sum to all us employees so that we could purchase ad hoc equipment, for instance, ergonomic chairs, light blue screen, raising laptops, so that to ensure a proper posture, a proper, let's say, teleworking ergonomic environment. OSHA guides underline the importance to involve workers and to implement risk assessments, but also recommending employers to financially support the purchase of new ergonomic equipment for telework and put in place training and awareness raising for workers. OSHA provides recommendation, for instance, for the participation of workers and their representative in the management board, putting in place specific measures for workers who were seriously ill, because this requires special consideration, even after being considered able to work under the medical quantity. Not enough, indeed. In the end of 2020, the situation seemed to improve. With vaccines, a high number of people recovered. However, during the following waves, COVID remained very serious. Several people had chronic symptoms for more than 12 weeks after the infection. The symptoms were diverse and affected the functions of internal organs, such as heart, lungs, kidneys, and cognitive functions. In a recent study on a random sample of adults with history of with confirmed COVID, 1/3 of participants reported post-acute syndromes 2 months after the initial infection. With regard to the OSHA publication on long COVID, about 1.5 years ago, OSHA identified lack of support to workers suffering of post-COVID symptoms. So OSHA developed material and provided information to highlight post-COVID syndromes, as well as good practice to be used by enterprises to enable smooth recovery of affected workers. OSHA collaborated with the Society of Occupational Medicine and developed 2 guides on COVID infection and long COVID. The guides were all translated to all EU languages and published on the OSHA websites, so they are available for whoever would like to download them, free of charge. The guides are as generic as possible to respect the different approaches adopted by EU countries. And in particular, on long COVID, 2 separate guides were developed, one tailored to workers and one tailored to managers. The Guide for Workers introduces the definition of long COVID because people were not aware about the definition, as the term that is used when the symptoms are still present after 4 weeks from the initial infection, and which prevent the worker to do normal activities. Particular attention was given to the fact that this is a common issue, as 1 out of 5 patients has still symptoms after 5 weeks, and 1 out of 10 has symptoms for 12 weeks or longer after acute COVID-19. The guides cover all stages of the illness until the return to work, and they underline the importance of an active communication and exchange of information between the worker and the manager to enable a safe return to work of the worker. Another important aspect is that before the return to work, even if the worker obtained the necessary medical permission to return, the worker and the manager must have the so-called return to work meeting. This is an effective talk about the process of returning to work that provides information on how the manager supports the process, how the manager supports the worker on the return to work. The meeting can be arranged by telephone or video conference and needs to assess the workload of the worker to ensure the worker will not be under excessive stress. At the meeting is recommended also the human resources or supervisor of the worker or the worker representative to be present. The guides suggest that the line manager and the worker list work demands under 3 main categories and provide estimated percentages on days when the worker can implement such demands. The 3 main categories are cognitive demands, which regard processing complex data, data entry requiring intense concentration, rapid switching of tasks, using multiple systems, complex decision-making, rapid and high-risk decision-making, managing multiple stakeholders or reports. Physical demands, such as repetitive movement, static posture, occasional moving of awkward or heavy items, and emotional demands, those dealing with vulnerable people or children, distressed clients or customer, potential for aggression or violence, the need to be emotionally flexible and resilient. Seeking an agreement between employer and worker is important, even though it is not 100% sure that employer can accommodate all the requests for adjustment. The guides suggest to define good practices, phase return with work tasks adapted to time. It is important that the worker does not feel afraid to make suggestions to the employer. The adjustment to work duties include, for example, alternation of timings, for example, starting and finishing time, number and duration of breaks, alternation of hours, longer or shorter days or days off, alternation of workload in line with the three demand areas to allow more time to finish the tasks or to allow fewer tasks than normal, alternations to work patterns like a need for regular break, temporary changes to duties and tasks like altered tasks, support system like a buddy system, which means having two individuals working together to monitoring and helping each other, clear objectives and review mechanism, working from home part of the time as technology allows, if feasible. Of course, this does not apply to frontline workers. And equipment adjustment, like blue light screen filters, ergonomic chairs, etc. The guide stresses also the importance to have the support from OSHA services and occupational physicians if needed, and in some cases to carry out individualized health risk assessments, since in some cases there cannot be common solutions that work for all workers. In this slide, you can also see the link to the guide for workers. As far as the guide for managers are concerned, OSHA tried to explain the problem, highlighting the important role of managers that play for effective return of workers. The guide also here covers all stages from the illness to the return phase. We stress the importance to maintain contact with the workers via phone, email, etc. If there are available OSHA psychological services, managers should inform workers about this and explain how to access this. It is important to underline that workers may feel guilty about the illness, and this can hinder their recovery. Managers should let them know that they are there to help and to support without asking again and again when they think they could be able to come back to work. Managers should provide information to workers about available rehabilitation policies, especially if it exists something with specific reference to COVID-19. Also, the guide explained about the importance of the discussion between managers and workers for an effective return to work and effectively adapt the specific tasks of the worker, because this is a benefit for both parties.
Less than 5 minutes left.
Sure, thank you. Recent studies reveal that if workers are expect or want to perform 100% of their original capacities, after a few weeks, they fall sick again, but with more severe symptoms that would not allow them to work at all. So managers should also consider seeking advice and using any support scheme or taking advantage of any possible governmental provision, either specific to COVID-19 or general ones, to adapt workplaces to workers' needs. The OSHA guides stress the importance of a smooth return to work and the importance for long COVID workers not to overdo, as it is not a benefit for the workplace. Also, the guide for managers provides the same example as in the guide for workers, with reference to adjustment of work duties. Specific mention is done on occupational health services and occupational physician support and individual risk assessment needs. The most important message of both guides is to raise awareness on the issues of long COVID, and secondly, to provide tailored advice for different groups, managers and workers, and to try to identify specific practices to promote an effective return to work and minimize the effect on the workplace of the long COVID sickness. All the mentioned resources, and in particular the guide for managers and for workers on long COVID, as I said, are available on the OSHA website and can be downloaded free of charge. The guides can be downloaded in all European Union languages. As a general and final comment, it is possible to say that COVID-19 has taught us that measures to prevent the spread of the virus to workplaces can be successful only if they are effectively adopted by all members of working organizations. Worker and manager should interact and communicate to each other, since as always, there is a strict interconnection between public health and occupational health. This is my email in case of any questions, and if you'd like to reach us at the OSHA, I'm happy to reply to any possible questions. Thank you very much.
Michele, very nice presentation and very informative, a lot of detail. I hope that the audience enjoyed also, as I did. And let's continue with our third presenter and of our session, Dr. Sterios Naris. Has a diploma in mechanical engineering from the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, as well as a Master of Science and in 2003, and he also earned his PhD in 2005 from the University of Thessaly. He has served as a visiting assistant professor in the University of Thessaly. From 2006, he is a staff member of Eliniae, head of Volos branch of the Institute. His research interests include micro and nanoscale transport phenomena, vacuum systems, turbomachinery, and occupational health and safety. He's an author or co-author of 26 papers in peer-reviewed journal and more than 40 conference papers with over 950 citations. And the title of his presentation is Health and Safety Challenges in the Modified Working Environment. And please, Sterios, if you're ready to share your screen.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Okay, just a minute.
Yes, please.
Okay, I think you can see the presentation.
Yes.
Just to increase the size. No, we are at the end of presentations.
No worries.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. To begin, I have to say just a few things about the Institute. Eliniae is the Hellenic Institute for Occupational Health and Safety. This is an organization formed by the social partners of the country to improve, obviously, the conditions of the health and safety conditions in Greece, and not only. Now, concerning about the COVID and post-COVID era, okay, during the pandemic, the Institute has made some actions and supported the ministry for legislation or other things. But I decided to build the presentation with from another viewpoint. COVID was something, an incident that changed our view for workplaces, for the society in general, and how we act and we respond to different phenomena that we do not expect. What really happened is that we found out that nothing is constant, that everything might change. And so I decided to present a few things about things that are about to come in the next period. So after a short introduction, I will talk about new occupational fields, about technologies introduced in the production and changing the conditions about health and safety, technologies improving the health and safety conditions, and some other things, as we will see, that also affect health and safety. Just a minute, because I have to be able to see the presentation. So, in the last, not only decade, but during the last 20 or 30 years, we had many technological changes that affect the working environment and change it dramatically. Which are these changes? First of all, we had the transformation of the labor market. We had the technologies introduced in the production procedures. This is called Industry 4, and now we have Industry 4.1 or 4.2. We have new technologies applied and improving health and safety conditions. We have also other global changes like climate changes, immigration, rise and fall of economic centers. We knew that Europe and US were the economic centers. Now Africa and Asia are increasing and becoming the economic centers. We have transitioned to different economic models. Metaverse, we heard, or some other models, and economy is changing. We have also global scale incidents like COVID-19, and when we were about to end with it, we had the war in Ukraine. So when something finishes, something else might arise. Also, we have different demographic profiles between countries, something that was not reality some years ago or some decades ago. All these things affect the working environment. Now, what happened with COVID? First of all, we had an acceleration of things that would happen in any case. We had teleworking that has been applied in many sectors, and a great percentage of the workers of each company. We have protocols, sanitary protocols. We had new technologies introduced like Zoom or other platforms, WebEx. We had WebEx for schools here in Greece. We have remote inspections even in industry. And we had an increased speed of transformation of production. Some examples here, you can see this image here. It's the protocol or the application that we verify that someone is vaccinated or he has the permission to enter to some places. All these applications would happen, but after some time. We had e-learning platforms, other platforms depending on the need of each enterprise in order to be able to continue production. We had outsourcing, much more than before, automation of production, IoT, remote control, etc. All these tools were developed or their development was accelerated due to COVID. Now, let's go to some new occupational fields. You can see the table here from a publication. It's written under the table, where we can see which professions will be automized or not in the future. You can see that we have things, we have some sectors that will not be affected, but some others, you can see at the end, telemarketers, accountants, and so on, that there will be more than 90% automation. And probably we will lose people working in these professions. Also, some other things, some other data is that 60% of all jobs will be affected by automation, and 60% of all kids in primary school will work in jobs that do not exist right now. This is, for me at least, impressive. So we have a very fast transformation of the labor market. Now, new forms of working. We have heard about digital nomads, teleworkers, platform workers, all these jobs that we didn't have about 20 years ago. You can see this picture. These girls are from Russia and they are influencers. And when the war started and Instagram stopped, had no access in Russia, these girls were crying and they said that they have no feelings or so on. But that was not the case. For these girls or boys, this is their job. So they lost their job. And the conclusion is that we have to have a broader perspective about what is a job and how, in which places we have to pay attention. Nevertheless, as many studies have proved, standard employment is still dominant. It might change in the future, but for now, standard employment is dominant. New forms of employment are expected to grow, but this trend is sensitive to unpredictable factors. It's not a straightforward line. Things might change by factors that we do not know right now. And also, employment forms are driven by the need of flexibility, either by employers or clients or workers. Now we go to see some changes in production, what we call Industry 4 or Industry 4.1. The most important technologies here are robotics, IoT, nanotechnology, and nanomaterials, which are things that have different properties than the materials that we know. Unmanned vehicles, simulation for software, artificial intelligence, augmented reality. And the basic thing here is that we have machines interacting without human engagement. In 4.1, we might have an increase and we have the client affecting or the user affecting even more the system. Some examples in construction industry, we have robotics. What we have here, lift and transportation of heavy objects or exoskeletons for the same job, but by a worker. Construct complicated structures like skyscrapers. We have UAV to transport materials to places that are not easily reached. Also, making works at places with high risk, like confined spaces or rescuers or working at height and so on. Inspection to places that are not easily reached or that are dangerous for workers. We have 3D printing or BAM, 4D building information modeling. Another example is agriculture, where we have artificial intelligence systems for the identification of hazardous plants or potential dangers for production or the environment, and optimal treatment of all this. Management of storage infrastructures, other aspects of smart agriculture. We have UAVs for spraying. And also we have, we use Internet of Things to have optimal operation of equipment, to identify local weather and specify the plan of works. We have tractors that, no, I said it before, unmanned and so on. What is the effect of all this to health and safety? We have at first less interaction between employees. We have more information from the system, from the sensors, but less information by reality. And this is a problem because when we build software, we can never have always everything included. We have we need specialized skills, and so we focus on a specific field, and we don't have the global knowledge of production, at least not in the extent that we had before. On the other hand, workers are less exposed to unsafe conditions. We have robotic systems doing the hard job, like for rescuing, as we had said before, divers, shipbuilding industry, mining, and so on. We need less personnel in places where we have danger, like places where we have robotic systems, robotic arms. We have, in general, moving elements of large inertia, or environments with high chemical risk. On the other hand, also, we have more information that can be easily understood. IoT provides huge amount of data, but we have to manage this. So we need systems to make fusion of all this data and provide useful and easily understood information to the user. We might have malfunction in the system, but also we can have the system identifying real-time problems of the production and solve them. Another risk is the properties of new materials like nanomaterials, and also cybersecurity, which is a very important issue. something that is very important, and many people work on this, is the psychosocial effects of all this transition. We have the fear of replacement by a machine. We have the feeling of insufficient knowledge or skills. Many people feel that they are not sufficient for the new environment, to do the job as it changes. We have the feeling of continuous inspection. If someone has cameras all around him, then this feeling is enlarged. We have a continuous need of knowledge update due to technological advances. Someone, maybe 50 years ago, learned the job and he could work on this for many, many years. Now, every year we need to update our knowledge. And stress due to the speed of changes. Now, technologies that are advancing OSHA conditions include many things. For example, we have repeatable or other works with high ergonomic risks are now performed by machines. Also, we can have older workers in production because works that need force are less and less. And we have systems to support them, like exoskeletons, as we said before. We have radio frequency identification systems that can monitor the vital parameters of workers, especially when we have people working alone on remote places. Internet of Things also prevent failures of machines or production systems that can cause accidents. For example, when we have increase of pressure in a vessel, this can be monitored by an IoT system and stop the heating of the vessel so as to prevent the accident. Now, all new technologies require training of the employees, and the level of expertise of each trained group has to be taken into account. We have to see which people we have to train and treat them correctly. Also, the frequency of changes must be such that it can be adopted by the employees. Now, another thing that is very important, and with COVID and other shocking incidents has been passed in a second floor, is the climate change. Here we have many effects that are very important for occupational health and safety. First of all, 5 minutes, 5 minutes? Thank you. Less, okay, not much more. So we have more days of extreme weather conditions. We have increased frequency of weather phenomena. It's not just the temperature increase. It is also the days and how strong are these phenomena. We have exposure to solar radiation. We have expansion of animal and plant species in new regions. And this expansion is transferring pathogens from place to place. We have more indoor working with air conditioning systems, something that was mentioned before for COVID. And so we have higher risk for things like Legionella. Other changes is increased immigration, which can cause violence due to due to racism, of course, but also to difficulties of communication, different mentalities, and so on. Something also important is the degradation of infrastructure because of thermal fatigue or due to a difference of design parameters. When a building is designed, and this thing happened 50 years ago, there were different levels of snowfall or the wind, the design of the parameters in general. So we have to test it again and see the new parameters that has to be satisfied. So we need more frequent inspection of all infrastructures. We have changes in agriculture, so I go to the conclusions because time is limited. So we do not have the plan how things will change in the next years, not even in the next few years. So we have to take into account this uncertainty. Changes we have are very fast, while unexpected incidents will be more often. Maybe we think that COVID was just one thing, but these pandemic incidents will keep on coming and will be more often. COVID also has shown how vulnerable are the constant that we designed our OSHA systems. And another thing is that even though these new forms of occupations and professions are attracting interest, many people are working on this, but the existing forms of work are still dominant. Also, as always, we have positive and negative effects, and the most important thing is that we have to work together. We need an interdisciplinary approach, and we need people from law, from work design, from tool design, manufacturing, from people expert in environmental issues, physical and social impact, human nature, medicine, work organization. All these people have to work together and see how we can treat these changes and be ready or more ready for future incidents like COVID. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sergio. And I would like to thank all the presenters of this session for the very informative and interesting talks. And if you don't have any, question between of you, we can just start to answer the questions from our audience. If you agree, this is the last session that we have here, and we're going to try to give some answer to questions. So I will start, as you can see that from the chat room, but also I will read them, and I will give to the presenter the appropriate time in a way to reply. So let's start with our first presenter, Echi. Here is one question from George Panopoulos. I read it. So, Echi, thank you very much. 2 questions, please. So, can you say that Africa responded to SARS-CoV in a unique way, or different approaches have been observed between countries, regions? If yes, what is the basis of these differences? And the second question is about, on companies level, how much the safety professionals are involved, or the matter is left with the doctors?
Okay, thank you so much, Christos. Africa, yes, we can't really say we responded we can say we responded in a unique way, but leveraging on the information that were already available. Remember, when we are doing, the model we used was looking at the global, looking at Africa, looking at country level, and looking at enterprise level. And the information we're taking, when the information that were already available globally, has been released by WHO as the pandemic began to evolve. But what we did, why I would say we responded in a very unique way, was because we knew who we were. We can't say we have such resources that were available in the West. Knowing the paucity of resource and insufficient resources we have available in Africa, we have to devise a way that we can take information that were already available to see how we can localize those information to suit our specific needs. And this became very, very, very unique and peculiar to us because we didn't have to wait. We didn't have resources available. We didn't have the requisite preparedness that we needed. So what made us unique is that we built our response in the midst of the pandemic. So in most countries, you have preparedness plans already in place. But when it came to Africa, we had to come together. That's what I talked about. We need collaboration, coming together to see how we can build response. So we built our system in the face of the pandemic. And that's why it's a very unique system that we have to respond to COVID. And what are the bases that made this unique? Two things are very clear: resources and preparedness. Those were the two clear things that we can see from there, because we had the very little resources. But how do we manage the resources to build in a system? We're not prepared. We're not prepared here. Yes, we have the COVID in front of us. What do we do? So we had to do that. Two key things that were the clear basis that made this very unique. Then again, we were not looking at countries as when the COVID came. We're not looking at Nigeria, Senegal, Togo. We came together as Africa as a people, to build a system that every citizen, every actor from each country can take from and domesticate, and it fits into their own system. Then the second question that says is the Africa system was not left to doctors. The truth is that when I mentioned those who were the key actors, bodies that were the key actors that were driving the actions in Africa, as a matter of fact, only few of these bodies have doctors. It wasn't left to doctors. We have group of occupational safety and health experts. Not just that, we have policy experts in our team that were driving these processes. Yet doctors had their role in terms of how do we, in return to work, what do we think people should do? So there were areas we needed doctors to be available, but the truth is that they were not left to doctors. We have occupational safety professionals in Nigeria that were driving this process. There is some other question that says, how do we address issue of shortages of occupational safety experts in Africa? Yes, we have that, and we can't shy away from that. And two reasons are responsible why that is available in Africa. One, we don't have enough OSHA training institutions in Africa. The second, the lack of leadership commitment, because if leadership has commitment, we should be having regional OSHA training centers across Africa. But be that as it's where, we are still able to use what we have to build resources. As of today, we are training people by the day. We don't want to wait for government, because the truth is that politicians don't build system, they destroy system. So what we have done as OSHA experts in Africa to see how we can, this belongs to us all. So we are raising people, training people by the day to ensure that we have enough capacity to respond to issues as they come. Yes, there are not enough OSHA experts, but we are training people and turning people out every day in seeing that how we can have enough people to support the cause of Africa. Africa have many workplaces. We need more professionals to come on board to support health and safety within the workplaces. I think these are two questions that were actually sent to me in my estimation. Thank you.
Thank you. And also answer the question by Marvelous about what are your thoughts on the shortage of occupational safety specialists and its implication on COVID-19 response in Africa? You just mentioned about that. And another another interesting question that I want to ask you, the last one from your side, is about from Nilza S. So, Ehi, thank you for the interesting presentation. I have read that only 60% of the population in Africa has been fully vaccinated against COVID-19, but non-African country was top ranked in terms of human losses. So what lesson learned in terms of business continuity Africa could share, taking into account significant experience with dealing with pandemic situations? This is the last question.
Thank you, Lisa.
2 minutes.
I hear that question everywhere. I hear that question everywhere I go to. I mean, true, only about 6% of African population have been vaccinated, and that's for obvious reasons, which we all know. And we're also asking, in the midst of this, when we look at the worst, the countries that have the worst mortality or infection rate, Africa country is not even there. But this is what science is still trying to unravel. But I was born and raised in Africa. In my opinion, every African child that was born as a few days after birth or a few hours after birth is exposed to malaria infection. So these are things that we are used to. So like we know, science have told us, infections, exposure to infection builds immunity. I mean, this is my personal opinion. So you have people in Africa, they don't really come down with, we don't have enough mortality or incident happen in Africa. Remember, we've had a lot of infectious disease outbreak to deal with in Africa. And I, in my opinion, believe dealing with this disease outbreak over time raised our immunity. Let me speak to the issue of the business continuity. We have learned a lot. We have learned in the business continuity issues that we're not also prepared for it. But what we noticed that happened is that when it happened, people have to work from homes. What were the key things that needed to be done? From a little observation and interviews and risk surveys we have done, we realized organizations realized that they were not prepared. What they had to do was, those who had electricity problem in some community in Africa, the organization they work for had to give them what you call inverter. We could pay for this. You pay part of it, we pay part of it, but it becomes yours, so that you can have electricity continuously to do your work at home. Those who had already established economic disorder as employees, and they had economic seats bought for them in the offices, now they are at home sitting on coffee table working, impounding the increase of their economic condition. What happened also, I mean, in dealing with that was, economic seats were signed off from workplaces, signed to employees, take them to your home. When we have to return to office in time to come, you can bring them back. But in the interim, be using this at home. And these are some of the issues that happened around business continuity. But the truth is that as of today, a lot of organizations in Africa are not coming to work physically. Bulk of the staff still work from home. So we have made provision for all those things.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you. Thank you very much. Because I want also to ask, and the other presenters, they have got also questions from the audience. So let's continue with Michele. Michele, one very nice question is about, also it's going to be a little bit off topic, from Andrea Romeo. So European Union, OSHA is doing a great job with occupational safety and health, in particular with ORA. But in some countries, such Italy, we're still experimenting huge number of fatalities at work, especially with small businesses. What is envisaging OSHA in order to involve small business employer association with respect to the improvement of safety culture? I think this is crucial for COVID tackling, measures, implementation, and the most important is for sure a general problem. Thanks in advance.
Thank you, Andrea, for your question. Well, I'll try to be brief and try to respond as much as I can. But as I said in the beginning, you're free to contact me to my email. I can put it in the chat for any a bit more deeper to also have a reply from my technical colleagues. In any case, as far as your question is concerned, I can anticipate that OSHA as a focal point in every European Union member state, and also, as I mentioned, in every EPA beneficiary. And this, in turn, have a national OSHA network. We disseminate and engage with enterprise organizations, including for SMEs, through them. And also, we reach through the SMEs, through the interesting project, EN OSHA Ambassadors. Within the Enterprise Europe Network, we have received and confirmed the appointment in each beneficiary of the project, so all European Union and EPA beneficiaries, about an ambassador for OSHA. The role of the ambassador, which is namely mostly coming from semi-private sector, like Chamber of Commerce or in industries or similar sectors, has the role to further spread OSHA awareness to the small and medium-sized enterprises and small and micro-sized enterprises. So this is a key element to further spread and raise awareness about OSHA. And we also strongly engage with SME United, the European SME organization. We, of course, recognize that reaching to the smallest businesses is very difficult. We have just published, in fact, the findings of our SNS survey on managing psychosocial risks in micro and small enterprises, which shows that leadership style is a key factor in micro enterprises, as well as flexibility of working arrangements.
Thank you, Michele. And another one question from the same person. The level of automation has interesting impact under the point of view of physical safety, climate change, and productivity. You already mentioned it this is for the stereos.
There's a question about this.
Yes, among the others, we could have also alienation risk, very similar to what we have experimented with COVID. How we can address this risk from a social perspective? What can be the role of the management in this framework? What can be the role of occupational health and safety professionals? Stereo.
Okay, there are two parts in this, to say the truth. First of all, this is not only a problem for workplaces or this system. It's a social problem. Some years ago, I was talking with an IT professor and asked him how possible was a scenario like the Matrix movie, where we would be somewhere and all of our life would be on the internet and so on. And he answered that this is a scenario, a possible scenario, but we never know what will happen. Anyway, this is also what I said at the beginning of the presentation. COVID has accelerated all these tests and all this transformation, not only of work life, but of life in general. As you might have heard, some companies are trying to find some different schemes, like 3 days working at home, 2 days working at the office, and so on, or trying to find the balance. Other companies are trying, have established some meetings, maybe once every week, just to have this contact, physical, this contact between employees. So we still try to find a scheme that will be more effective. And of course, management and us professionals play a very critical role on this, also on design and implementing these schemes. But I don't think that right now we have the answer, how we can solve this. We still try to find some things. And also, it depends on the company. Every place and every company have a different culture and different characteristics. So each company has to find the proper solution.
Thank you, Sterios. Michele, I don't know if you, this was the question that I asked you before. I don't know if you have to do 1 or 2 minutes, 1 minute or 2 minutes last comments, if you didn't understand that correct.
I can't refer to the previous question because I saw in the chat there was a question to me. I think you skipped that. I can read it on your behalf.
No, I can read it. I read it the same.
Okay.
It was the same. So it was like, maybe this question is a little off topic from your presentation. European OSHA is doing a great job with occupational safety and health, in particular with ORA, but in some countries such as Italy, we are still experimenting huge number of fatalities at work, especially with small businesses. What is envisaging OSHA is in order to involve small business employer association with respect to the improvement of safety culture. I think this is the crucial for COVID measures implementation, and most important is for sure general problems. Thanks in advance. I think this was what I have read, but I don't know if you didn't
correct. This is what you read, and I see.
So give us 1 minute. Yes, give us 1 minute if you want some additional comments to this. And we close that if you want. This is the last.
On that question, I replied as much as I could. There was a question concerning Andrea Romero asking if we have data referred to the different level implementation of COVID, tackling good practice measures among EU countries. Is the situation homogeneous, or do you notice huge differences?
Okay, I have received right now from you this one. Okay, please answer this one for 1 minute.
Yes, well, true. Different systems in social insurance, labor inspections, the implementation of new directives, member states makes the comparison very difficult. For sure, it's possible to say that all EU member states have taken strong action. We have seen different approaches, for example, and here there was a question to which I can refer on the recognition of COVID as an occupational disease, but this is a responsibility of the member states, and this is linked to the social insurance protection. We have seen increased cooperation between public health and occupational health organizations, for example, between public health inspectors and labor inspectors. But, well, of course, we have framework rules and implementation varies from country to country. But the tendency is that there is more and more implementation on these issues.
Thank you, Michele. And we have got almost 1 minute and a few seconds. So I would like just to mention here to the audience that then we have a network break. So please join in order to meet other people and exchange ideas, or to discuss more details about the presentation of our presenters here. I would like to thank all of you for the great material that you presented today, for the very nice answers that you provided to the audience, and that you're sharing your ideas, your experience, and the lesson learned from your experience. This is something very important for all of us, especially the people who are working in occupational health safety. That's it. I don't know if you have anyone from you has a last comment. We have got just a few seconds. I'll be very happy to listen to you. If you don't have anything else, we can just follow up with a network break.
Thank you very much for.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you very much.
It was nice to meet you. Thank you.
And stay safe.